For some reason, invoicing can cause a lot of stress in consultants. I suspect that part of the reason why that is so is because consultants often come from an academic background, and academics usually look down their noses at consultants. The underlying current in academia is that we should do research because it's fun, because we really like it, because we think it's important, not for the money. And of course, if you're a prof and you have tenure, that's a beautiful and noble approach to take, but one which I think ultimately is devoid of sense. It betrays, in my mind, a fairly complete lack of understanding and sympathy for what non-academics are doing. Arrogance is not a good look on people. Your invoices should be simple. The items that you include should be aligned with the deliverables and the milestones that were agreed to in the proposal and its amendments. There's various ways in which you can invoice. You can do so upfront. Whenever I offer a training session, participants have to pay before the training session starts. You can do so at regular intervals. This is if you're going to be doing advisory or long-term work. You might want to invoice after milestones have been met or deliverables have been handed in. Works well when you have modular projects. Some instances, you will only invoice upon completion. You do that only if you trust the client. For instance, if you're working with a government department, and there may be some mixtures as well. The goal of invoicing is super simple. You need to keep money flowing so you can pay your expenses. And if you feel uncomfortable about the idea of money, remember that you need money in order to pay your team members, if you're the team lead, or salaries, if you're the owner of a consulting firm. You're not selling out when you're asking for the money. If you send the invoices before the client agrees that the work's been done or that the milestone has been met, there might be some pushback there. There might have to be some back and forth. With most reasonable clients, that is not going to be a problem. But be careful. Some clients are not reasonable. How long should you wait after you've sent the invoice to poke the clients to remind them that there is an invoice that's due? Some people like to be explicit on their invoices. They say you have 30 days to pay the invoice, or 2 months to do so. That's something you'll have to play by ear. It is conceivable that after having poked them, the client disappears and just doesn't pay for the work. That happens. You need to decide for yourself when you are going to be pursuing the matter through legal means. Is it worth getting the courts involved? Can you swallow the loss? Do you want to send a message? Are you feeling disrespected? In some instances, the wisest thing to do is to just walk away without getting paid. In these cases, you should document the work that you have done and the steps you have taken to obtain payment, together with the contracts that have been signed. Perhaps you want to make a complaint to the Better Business Bureau. You might feel like going online and leaving a bad Yelp review or something of this nature. I should remind you that this rarely works the way we want it to work. More often than not, it ends up making us look bad. It's frustrating when that happens, and it will happen. You need to come up with some way to deal with the situation. One way in which you can mitigate the risk is to be working on multiple projects and not to put all your eggs in one basket. That usually means more smaller projects with a variety of clients than one big project, which means that you need to be able to juggle multiple projects. It's not usually a problem, but be aware that it could be. What should you be putting on your invoices? Well, you want the name, the address, the contact info for the client. Typically, this is something you would put in the upper left corner. The date of the invoice is actually quite important because a lot of clients have fiscal calendars and they need to make sure that the invoice is received within their fiscal period. It helps to give them your reference number for the project, which will be presumably different from their reference number. Mention that this is an invoice. List what the project should be, the contact information on your end, what company is providing the invoice, because the people who will receive the invoice aren't usually the people that you've been interacting with during the project. If you have an account number, you should also be putting it in there, because on your end, the people who will process the invoices might also not be people who've actually worked on the project. And here I've provided you two examples. One where we had an hourly fee and a total number of hours that had been agreed to, and so you multiply the number of hours by the appropriate rates. Don't forget HST. If you collect HST, you need to put your HST number here. I blanked mine out. I've blanked these out for obvious reasons. And then you also mention who they should be making the check payable to, the address and what have you. Nowadays, a lot of these payments will take place with credit cards as well, or email transfers. If you have the capacity to receive payment this way, explicitly state it. The other invoice is one where the total amount had been agreed for the project as a whole, and so we don't give them the number of hours for each of the steps, but we describe what the steps were because they matched the methodology and the deliverables from the proposals and the full amount that had been agreed.